Alright, so I think the race will be getting on within the next few seconds, and they're off. So basically in this game, or you'll see in prologue, there's really not much to it. You're just kind of jumping through somewhat of a more simple kind of layout of a map. There isn't too much challenge to it. Oh, but King Captain accidentally getting the early retry there. Which does happen often to all runners, I guess. So it's not uncommon, but it's unfortunate for sure. And here we have the bird, which basically tells you you can dash pretty much. And that will come in very important to later in the game, which obviously we will see. So the next map here, Forsaken City, there's not much to it. There's just kind of dashing, and there's the zipper blocks, but obviously as speedrunners we have optimizations enough to make it so we go absolutely insane in these. And as you can see from both sides, they're wall bouncing and hyper dashing all over the place, which are both advanced movement techniques. And here we see from King Captain, he got a reverse hyper dash, which is a fairly hard trick to pull off, so certainly pretty good from him. King J taking an unfortunate death there, but it was not too much of a time waster, so and we see King Captain finishing with a 120, which is a very good time. And we see King J following quickly after with what looks to be a 129. Now we see both of them now going into Old Site, which introduces the mechanic of the Dream Blocks, which is my personal favorite, which basically just extends your dash somewhat across kind of the area that the Dream Block spans. And what we saw from King Captain there, oh, well, he almost got it, but he tried to get a trick where basically what happens is when you enter a cutscene, your X position is always changed, but the Y position is not. So he abuses that system and is able to, or what he tried to pull off was to try and skip the cutscene and end up in the Dream Block, which saves maybe a second, maybe a little bit less. And now we see King Captain and soon King J going into the battle and fight, which is basically like anything like the the Shadow Mario fights you had in Super Mario Galaxy, where battle in here just mimics all your movements, so you kind of have to remember where you went before after you were there, which does add some challenge playing casually, but I'm sure all runners will have no problem with it. And now we see King Captain has finished the the battle and fight and is moving into the awake section, which is just basically movement as fast as possible with no obstacles. There aren't really any spikes. This is kind of making use of hyper dashes and occasionally ultra dashes to get through to the end of the level as quickly as possible. And we see him finish with a 2:15, which is a fairly respectable time. And King J following quickly after as well. And next we have Celestial Resort, which from what I've seen is not very liked within the community. The dust bunnies move on cycles, which sometimes can be easy, like the current room King Captain just finished, and other ones that can be very tricky. So that adds a big level of, either way they add a big level of kind of difficulty to running the game. There's a lot of ways you could die here. And now as we see, King Captain is now moving into the huge mess portion where you have to get to a Shiro here, our good old friend, until the end of the level. You kind of have to navigate your way through these narrow kind of hallways, which honestly can waste a lot of time since they with like how tight they are, they really limit your movement overall. So it's just kind of serves as a challenge, just running wise, not kind of without any deaths or anything. And what we'll see from him here is there's what we call the spike jump, which he did pull off, where basically if you're moving like away from a spike wall and you jump on it, it's a very precise trick, except when pulled off it can save a lot of time, where you can just kind of sort of bounce off the spikes. We'll also see something like it in the next chapter, something very similar to it, and certainly a good strat for maximum optimization in these levels. We see an unfortunate death from King J here. This is one example of the Chapter 3 cycles being very difficult, where in this room in particular, they leave you very little room to or very little leniency. So it's like if you make one mistake, then you kind of mess up. And now we see King Captain moving into the elevator shaft portion of Celestial Resort, which is probably, in my opinion, the hardest. I think a lot of the rooms here are just much trickier than the rest, but as we'll see, it all comes down to the runner, I guess, and how they perform. And coming up in this room here, we will see, yes, King Captain goes for the cycle skip and just barely misses it on the last block, which is a big shame, because, I mean, I've done that to myself. It's not easy, but it's kind of painful to miss it, I guess. And he gets it. And we see King Jace hitting the last block of the huge mess portion, where he'll soon be into the elevator shaft portion, just like King Captain at the moment. Oh, and an unfortunate death there. He went a little ambitious on that cycle, and I guess he paid the price. Oh, but he gets it the next try, so that's always good. And then we'll see King Captain moving into the Oshiro portion, which is somewhat of a boss fight. Basically, the Oshiro boss, he's on a cycle as well, where like after enough time, he'll lock onto your Y position and do like a dash across the entire screen, and it slows down once you get near him because the game gives you a chance to not get killed by him, but he can still prove to be fairly difficult when you have these memorized strats and you happen to make a small error. And we see King J here. He's also getting the key, and I forgot to mention how that key is one of the 2 intentional deaths in the run, where basically it would be faster to just retry with the key after you get it, instead of going back the intended route up near the top of that room. So it's just a time save, but a very easy one. And we see King Captain closing out Chapter 3 with the 630, a decent time. And we see King J also starting in the Oshiro portion. He's certainly playing it safe here, because on a lot of the Oshiro rooms, deaths can be very costly. And we see King Captain starting on Chapter 4, which introduces a lot more mechanics. It includes those blue kind of balls, I guess, which kind of act as an extra dash. And then obviously he's on a wind map wind room right now, which is one of the least favorite kind of, I guess, mechanics community wise. And then there's also the clouds, which kind of just act as a trampoline somewhat. And we see here King Captain is doing a dash cancel on the clouds, which kind of allows him to propel him forward and up, which can certainly prove useful in a few certain rooms in Chapter 4. And we see King J closing out Chapter 3. This is looking like a fairly close race, maybe a minute in between them. And here on King Captain's screen, there's an upcoming auto-scroller skip, which he doesn't go for, which is completely fine. It's kind of a high-risk, high-reward strategy. Oh, but an unfortunate death there. He couldn't really grab onto that one kind of wall there, which certainly is, I don't know. It's not good, but it wasn't too big of a time loss. And he's still ahead by a large, well, not a large margin, but he's still ahead by a bit. So it shouldn't be too costly for him. And we see King J getting a nice save there. He couldn't get enough distance with that cloud jump, dashing back to the other one. And now King Captain's heading into the very windy section of Chapter 4, Cliff Face, which also throws another mechanic at you, the snowballs, which they're basically mini Oshiros, but they come from the opposite direction, and they don't have kind of a warning of where they'll be coming from, which makes them much more of a challenge. But they do take up a lot less space than Oshiro. So they have that as well. And we see King Captain using a swag strat where he's wave dashing off the kind of very small, very kind of narrow ledges there. And he closes out Chapter 4 with what looks to be a 351, I believe. And now in Mirror Temple, they throw even more mechanics at you. But the first thing you'll see is these kind of dash blocks, which are somewhat like the zipper blocks you saw in Chapter 1, except instead of being triggered by contact, they're triggered by like you dashing. So, and then there's also the red bubbles, which basically act as blue bubbles, except they can go on infinitely, as opposed to the blue ones found in Chapter 4, which only give you about the length of a single dash. Oh, and Captain using another swag strat, which is somewhat of the trick he tried in Chapter 2, where you do the cutscene skip, where you basically get put where the button is, as opposed to on the ground, since the game holds your Y position instead of changing it when skipping a cutscene, and that's the much less used one. So that's fairly impressive, I'll say. And we have King J moving up to the last room of Chapter 4, which he does cleanly and finishes out with a 425. And here we have King Captain into the kind of tutorial of the Seeker bit, which is an enemy you'll find later in Chapter 5. And this is just kind of a tutorial in the sense that it teaches you how the Seekers work themselves, how they have dashes themselves, and they'll just kind of follow you and try to take you out, I guess. So definitely something to be worried about later in the game once he gets there. And here King Captain is going to the first room with the Seeker, but it happens to be no problem. He's able to blow right past it without the Seeker even noticing. And another cool thing with the Seekers is how you can manipulate their dash movement for your own kind of benefit. Like, you can make them hit some of these coin buttons for you, which does save a lot of time, because it means you don't have to go and get them yourself. You can kind of use the enemies to your advantage other than your loss, which certainly a cool thing. And coming up on King Captain's screen as well, we will be seeing the one major skip in the entire game, which is Surge Skip. You should be coming up to it within the next few seconds, which basically requires a reverse dash cancel, a reverse extended dash cancel, which saves about 2 to 3 minutes, which certainly is an essential part for any Celeste speedrun. And he gets it first try. And now we see King J also coming up to the Seeker tutorial, not too far behind King Captain. Maybe a minute to 2 minutes, which is pretty good if you ask me. Seeing as their PBs are about 6 minutes apart, it's fairly good. Fairly good, I'd say. More like really good. But yeah, here we have King Captain also going to the Theo Crystal bit, which casually can be a big pain because when you're holding Theo, you're not able to dash. But if you throw him, you can either dash or use any kind of advanced dash movement like the dash cancel or hyper dash to kind of allow some movement as well. And the thing with the Theo Crystal is, one thing that is very popular with the tasks is how, like, when you pick up Theo, you're able to conserve your momentum much more than if you weren't. So that can allow for some very crazy movement. And here we see King J moving into the last room of Unraveling. We'll see if he does the Surge Skip, which I'm guessing he will. And a very close call for King Captain. He almost got caught by the Seeker there. And King Captain now in the last Seeker room of Chapter 5. Very close to the end. And we see King J here. It looks like he is going for the Surge Skip. Let's see if he gets it. And he does. And King Captain closes out Chapter 5 with a 6-11, I believe. Yes. And moving into Reflection, which as well puts in some more new mechanics. As we'll see from the very start, there's the Feather, which is kind of analog movement. It's omnidirectional, so this is kind of a place where the analog stick controllers can really excel as compared to a keyboard or a D-pad. And there are some somewhat small skips that are able to be achieved with the analog stick as opposed to their cardinal counterparts. And the other thing, we have what the community has coined the Kevin blocks, made by one of the developers of the game, where like he kind of came up. It was either he came up with the idea of these blocks, or he came up with the noise of the blocks, which, well, we're getting audio from King J, but once he gets there, you'll be able to hear it if you don't know. But I'd say it's a little bit of a wacky noise. It's certainly a fan favorite. Oh, and King J sitting that Seeker down with that extended dash cancel. That was pretty nice. And now King J moving into the last room of Chapter 5. Knocking that Seeker down yet again. And again. And he's now in the eyeball room about to finish. And he finishes with what looks to be a 641, I believe. Can't really tell from my screen, but nonetheless a pretty good time. And as you can hear right now with King J's audio, that's the Kevin block noise if you haven't heard it. And we have King Captain going into the second phase of reflection before the battle and fight, where you just kind of chase Battlin's hair, I guess, around to try and like kind of before you enter the fight with her. And he's using these some of these developer created shortcuts, which is certainly a nice touch, which allows you to kind of blow through that portion of reflection, that certain room, a lot faster, which is always a nice touch because that room is certainly one of the longer ones in the game. And here, King Captain is now entering the battle and fight, which basically the same enemy from Chapter 2, except much different. Instead of battle and mimicking your movements, she just sits back and fires lasers at you. Oh, and one thing I also forgot to mention is in Chapter 6 we have the bumpers, which basically, as their name states, they're just bumpers. You can use them to your advantage, or they can kind of screw you over. As speedrunners, obviously, we're able to use them to our advantage much more. But they just kind of push you in kind of the opposite direction that you hit them in. Alright, and now we see King Captain moving into the second phase of the battle and fight, where basically all the blocks are moving on certain cycles, rather than being stationary and only moving when Battlein gets hit, which adds for casually much more difficulty, because you have not only Battlein's lasers to worry about, but also these moving blocks in their cycles. But as we'll see, our runners will make quick work of it, with not much of a challenge. And now we see King Captain moving into the final room with Battle and Fight, a very long room, which can be very costly if you die, especially near the end of it. Oh, when he... Oh, that's commentator's curse. I'm sorry. And now we have King J also on the Battle and Fight. Now we can actually hear the music. Shout out to Lena Rain, by the way, of this. I want to see a lot of hey ya's in chat if we can. And King Captain, he's closing out Chapter 6 now with what looks to be a 707, which is a pretty good time. And now he's moving into the final chapter of the game, Summit, which is just a culmination of all the previous chapters and kind of sub-levels, as you will see later on. Oh, and King J taking costly death there. That's certainly unfortunate. He almost had it, but I mean, they're lasers. They're not exactly kind of pushovers, I guess. They're freaking lasers. And we see King Captain closing out the first bit of Summit, the 0 meter quote-unquote portion. And we see him moving into the remixed part of Chapter 1, which is 500 meters. And we see King J now. He's finished with the first phase of this Battle and Fight. And after this kind of cutscene room, he'll be moving into the second phase. Oh, and King Captain just overshoots that platform there. Not the most costly of deaths, maybe a few seconds at most, but yeah. And now we see him closing out the 500 meter part, heading into the 1000 meter part, which is the remix part of Chapter 2, with all the dream blocks, which I'll admit is my favorite part. So, and there are some strats in here which do offer a bit of time save. This one here, which he doesn't go for because it's a bit risky. There's a very possible chance of an out of bounds death with that strategy, so I don't blame him for skipping out on it. And here we have King J on the final room with the Battle and Fight, and he finishes it. And now we have King Captain going into the most difficult, well, arguably the most difficult part of Summit, the 1500 meter part. Again, it's with all of Chapter 3, except kind of some of the cycles here are ramped up and are much harder than on the normal chapter. So let's see how he does on them. And we also have King J, who's finally finished Reflection, is moving on to Summit just as well. And King Captain is now at a 1500 and into the 2000 meter portion. And we see King J is now in the 500 meter portion now. And King Captain entering the only snowball room of 2000 meters, which can be pretty tricky, but he clears it first try. Oh, and King J getting a bit of a rough death there, but he clears it up his second try, which is always good. Oh, and King Captain getting a death at the end of that room, which will take off a bit of time. And now King Captain is going into the most skip-heavy part of the of Summit, 2,500 meters. Where each room kind of has a different kind of trick, difficult or not, to traverse through it faster than the normal way. And we see him attempting for key skip here. He's not going to get the first 3 tries, but now he gets it. Key skip and 2500 is basically making use of 2 spike jumps, I guess, like the ones we saw in Chapter 4 and Chapter 3. To basically kind of skip an entire area of that one room, saving, I'm not exactly sure how much time, but it does save some time. Oh, and King Captain, he's going for door skip, the infamous door skip. He gets 1. He gets 2. He did the great meme, as the Celeste community has called it. He's saved 1 second on his time, so yeah. And he is going into the 3,000 meter bit on the final stretch of the run, where as we'll see, makes use of multiple kind of wind variations, kind of different, kind of similar to the ones we saw in Chapter 4, except instead of horizontal wind, now we have vertical wind, where he has a downdraft, which kind of grounds him a bit. And casually, this can be one of the more harder areas. It kind of gives you less time to jump, kind of less time to make your decisions, I guess, if you will. But in the speedrunning sense, since we all have optimized this game to complete insanity, in some ways the downdraft is better because it allows us to like kind of make our jumps and dashes in more quick succession. And now we see King J moving on to the 2000 bit, and King Captain moving into the updraft bit. Oh, and it takes a rough death there, attempting to go for the skip of the 18 flag, but getting it second try. We see King J playing it pretty safe in the snowball room of 2000, and he clears it. Oh, King Captain taking a rough death on number 13. Certainly one of the longer flags of 3000. And now we see both runners closing out their own respective sections. King Captain moving into the final stretch, the final bit of 3000, the kind of last portion of his run, and we see King J moving into the 2500 bit. And if I'm not mistaken, this is possibly a big PB for King Captain as well. I believe his PB is somewhere in the 42 range. Yes, it's 42.45. So this could be a massive personal best for him. And he's on flag 1, the final flag of the game. Is he able to pull out a sub 40? We will see. He's certainly going to cut it close. And can he? Oh, and he does! I believe he did. I believe he clutched the sub 40. Oh! Just barely. By what? Maybe a few frames. That's certainly unfortunate, but a PB is still a PB. And that's by 2 minutes, so congratulations King Captain on that massive personal best. And we have King J, who I believe is in the 48 range. So this could very well be a PB for him as well. Oh, and he's skipping flag 24. Oh, when he pays the price, that's rough. And he's doing it again. Let's see if it pays off this time. And it does. Yes, King J has a 4807, so this could be a massive PB for him as well. As he's going into the updraft part. He's certainly going through this 3000 bit very cleanly, with a minimum amount of deaths. I hope I didn't curse that. And skipping flag 8. With what looks to be like a very, very good time. He's still got 4 minutes until the PB, so if he does this part deathless, he might be able to pull out a sub 45, which is nothing short of a monumental achievement. Oh, just barely. That's certainly an unfortunate death with the misdirection dash, but he's right back where he was, and he cleans it up. And he's on flag 2. He's not able to pull out the sub 45, but nonetheless, this is looking like a very big PB on his side. A death early in flag 1, thank god it was early, and not late in flag 1, that would have certainly been a heartbreak there. And he closes out with a 45-21. Almost 3 minutes ahead of his PB. Everybody give these runners both a round of applause on these monumental achievements both of them had. Alright, so that looks like the end of the race. That was certainly a good one to watch. At least, I certainly loved that race. Certainly impressive for both of them to win, or not to win, but for both of them to PB in the same race. I can't ever PB when I race this game, so congratulations to both of them. So I believe that's that might be all for the race. I believe there is another one, a 4-way race happening between I believe I think we might be able to get a few interviews from the runners. I know we'll be able to get King J in here. So, all right, hello, King J. That was impressive.
That was a horrible run. I don't know how that worked.
I mean, you still PB'd by 3 minutes. PBs are PB.
It's not 3 minutes. I PB'd before this run, so that's a double PB today. I got a 46.03 right before this run, so I don't know how I sub 46, but it still worked. I mean, I was dying a lot early on because I was like really worried and nervous because this is my first match at the tournament, so. But
you certainly capitalized near the end.
Oh yeah, I have 4 gold splits in a row at the end.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was still a good run and still good a race. That was fairly close between us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really don't know how that PB'd though, but it just shows how much time I have to save.
Yeah, you're certainly improving quick, so.
Yeah, like a week before this, I had a 53, and now I'm down to 45.
Jeez. Hopefully it's not quick enough to bop me off the leaderboards. That's for sure.
Is King Captain coming in?
I'm not sure. Doesn't look like he can, but maybe he can. I'm not sure. I might try to get a quick interview with him. 1 sec.
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't look like he's able to get an interview with us, but there is another race. I believe it's a 4-way race happening very soon. Let me check which racers it's with. Yeah, I think I can't find where it says, or wait, maybe I can. Yeah, I think it's between Tagerson, JJ Plays Games, Felix TC, and Gix. I do know about a few of those runners, and I'm pretty sure it'll be a pretty good race to watch, so stay tuned. I think it's still on Speed Gaming 5, so don't leave the stream just yet. And I believe that's kind of all the time we have, so thank you all for watching. Thank you, King J and King Captain, for running, and this was certainly a fun race to watch. And I guess we'll be out until the next one.
Alright, and thanks for commentating.
Yeah, no problem.